All right, good evening, and welcome back to the Daf Yomi. We continue on the catch-up train, and we are sponsored this week by Rabbi Aaron and Evelyn Kislasi. Lili Nishmas, Rabbi Aaron's father, Shmuel ben Yaakov, Zichron Levrachos, your is on the 13th of Sivan. May his neshama have an aliyah. We are at Amar of Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, which is towards the middle of the page. I'm trying to figure out where to count from. Almost where you see the Tosfos Kamishpat. I'm going to take the shortcut, right? The Tosfos Kamishpat Chatos Behema. If you go over there and go two more lines down, that's where you are. Amar of Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. Okay. 15 lines. Beautiful. Thank you. Appreciate the shortcut. Is asking Rabbi to count the lines for me. Excellent. Amar Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, Rabbi Yisrael Shmuel. Talking about severing the neck and the meat in the back of the neck, which we were discussing. Nishbara mafrekes verov basar. If you have a human being who breaks his neck and severs the flesh in the back of the neck, so then with it, so metame ba'ohel, that person, even if he's still moving around, is considered deceased, and the tuma transfers. He transmits tuma in the entire room where that body is. Vim tomar ose masa de eli. And if you're going to say, well, what about Eli, the Kohen, as we will remember that the story was that he was the Kohen Gadol during the times that the Aron had been captured by the Plishtim. And then he had been told that the Plishtim had captured it, so he fell back in his chair and died. Right? He fell off his chair and died, broke his neck. So that circumstance was mafrekes below rov balser havai. That was just he broke his neck and he didn't sever any of the flesh. Right? It wasn't like a guillotine situation at all. It was just simply he broke his neck. So the answer is, yeah, that's true, but zikna shani. That's different because he was old. And so therefore more susceptible to dying from less serious injuries. Tichsiv, as the pasuk says, Vayihi kehaz kiro es aron halokim, when he was told about the Aron of Hashem, Vayipol me'al akisei achoronis, he fell off his chair backwards. Be'ad yad hashar vatishaver mafrakto, by the side, I guess, of the gate, by the doorway there, and he broke his spine. Vayamos, and he died. Ki zakin ha'ish v'chaved, because he was older and it was a heavy blow, strong blow. So therefore, he died because he was older. So that's why we tell the kids not to lean back in their seats all the time, right? Because this is one up Ailey, right? Don't do that. Ailey, plus in those chairs especially.
Oh, yeah.
Amar Rav Yehuda bar Nachmani, Amar Rav Yochanan, Rav Shmuel bar Nachmani says the name of Rav Yochanan, Kra'o kedug. If you cut open a man like a fish, gut him like a fish. That's a saying that people say. You cut a man open like a fish. You gut him like a fish. Here's a picture of cutting not a person, but a fish. Okay? Right? When you fillet the fish, right? Slice it down the middle, right? That's how you fillet the fish, right? So if you do that, metame be'ohel. So the person is considered dead, and he transmits tuma inside of the room that he is. Amar Reb Shmuel bar Yitzchak. Reb Shmuel bar Yitzchak says, Ve'migabo. This is, we're talking about where he was cut from behind in his back, right? You have old medieval torture devices and things where they would disembowel you and cut open your stomach and things. That would not necessarily kill you, right? That was the intent of it.
But you can't
not necessarily kill.
That's a point, because you're supposed to approach it from the front, not the back.
So this, sorry?
You're surprising him, which makes him weaker.
But I don't know if even if he's not surprised, it's pretty bad, right?
Yeah.
So
does he have the spine and the rib cage in the way?
In the back, it seems so. Yes. And I don't know if you're severing, right? If you're severing any of the bones on the way, but it doesn't say that, right? It doesn't say he's severing any of the bones. But nevertheless, I guess just cutting and stabbing and cutting down. You must be cutting through the bones in the back, the rib cage in the back. You must be, because otherwise, what would be the point of it? Then you're just cutting the skin open. That's not right. This is like cutting, right? So anyway, that's a bad wound. That's gonna finish you off.
Serious.
Amar Shmuel says asa gistera, right? If you are cut lengthwise, gistera, right? So they don't show any human beings, right? They have, I guess, a policy. So here's a animal chopped into, right? And that way, right? So that is, if you do that, so then nevela, the animal is now deceased and considered a nevela. Amar Rabbi Elazar says, Nito hayarich, if the animal's leg comes off, the chalal shalah and nikar, and you can see the opening where the leg was, nevela, then the animal is considered nevela, it's dead. So heichi dami chalal shalah, what do you mean when you can see it? So Amar Rava says, Kol sheravutza v'niris chasera. If you can see it's on the ground, it's kneeling on the ground, and you can see it missing a limb. And they've got pictures of that as well, this chesty book, right? It's lying on the ground, and you can see that it is missing a leg. Even though it is lying on the ground, you can see that its body is covering the side, right? Because if you're over here, you can definitely see that it's missing a leg, right? There's one leg missing. They even have an arrow indicating that the leg is missing. But that's what it would look like if the cow was indeed crouching. Then that is considered a dead cow. It's not going to survive that. Doesn't survive that wound. Okay. It's not awesome. We learned in a Mishnah over there in Meseches Olos. Hutzu Roshehen. If these 8 shrotzim, if their head is severed, afal pi she mifarksin, even if these little creatures are still moving around, tmeim, they are tameh, right? A dead weasel, with the weasels, moles, those kinds of creatures.
Or dead raccoon.
I don't know if raccoon is on the list. That's why I'm always wondering, like, to be able to translate that list. I'm not exactly sure I could to translate all of them. I see the tortoise or whatever, and so just some different lists. You hear see different words for things. The hare is not. So they are tmeim. Then they are tummy immediately. Kiznav halatah shemifar kesses. Even though they wriggle around a lot, even if you chop off their heads, and that's because it's like the tail of a lizard. If you've ever been to Florida, and you've got those lizards or whatever, and you try to pick one up by the tail in order to get it out of your house, and the tail comes right off, right? And they just keeps moving, and it's really gross.
At least it's not painful for the lizard.
I live there, right? And they even have pictures, right? Here's a little sheretz with its head removed, right? And here is the lizard with its tail still wiggling. It's got little moving lines by the side of it indicate the motion in the picture, right? It's very good, this book, right?
Yeah, very good.
Amar my hutsu. So what does that mean when what is the amount that the head has to be severed from the body? Reish Lakish Amar hutsu mamish. Reish Lakish says like literally cut off. And Rav Asi Amar Ravani, and Rav Asi said Ravani, Havdalas olas ha'of. It's like when we said that they severed the skin, they severed the head of the ola offering of the bird, where we said that you severed the spinal cord, you severed most of the flesh inside, you severed the trachea and the esophagus, but you don't have to cut you don't have to cut the skin off, right? Because the skin could still be attached, so the head is still attached, but that's considered to be severed. Amar le Rabbi Yirmiyah l'Ravasi. So Rabbi Yirmiyah says to Ravasi, Kel Havdalas olas ha'of l'Rabbanon. This is talking about the opinion is according to the severing of the head, according to the Rabbanon, right? That they say that you have to slice through the trachea and the esophagus completely, both of them. And so, velo palgisu, and therefore there's no real argument between the two, because that essentially is severing the whole head, just being dangling on by skin. That's basically they're agreeing with each other. Odilma kavdalas olas of Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon, or does he mean severing the head like an ola of an oaf like Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon, who says that you only have to sever the majority of the trachea and the esophagus, which is a difference now. Pligisu, and now you have an argument between the first opinion by Shlakish, who says that you have to sever the head completely, and this opinion that says you only have to sever the limb mostly. So Amar Lei, so he said, Kavdalas ha'of l'Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon upalginon. It's according to Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon's opinion, and therefore it is an argument. You definitely have to have less of the head severed than Rish Lakish thinks. Ekadamri, there are those who said, no, Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, Rabbi Shimon Lakish says, Hutzu mamish, it literally has to be severed, the head has to be severed. Rav Ravasi Amar Ramani, Ravasi and Ramani, Kavdalas Olas Ha'of Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon. He was not asking the question. He said straight out, this is according to the opinion of Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon. The head doesn't have to be completely severed. It just be the most of the trachea and the esophagus. Berov Shnaim. That's it, most of the way of two of them, and then that would be sufficient. And therefore, right, this picture seems to indicate that it's completely severed because they even have little. You can see the little kind of enmeshed in the picture there. Okay. So, my Rabbanan, my Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon. So, where do we see this argument between the Rabbanan and Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon about how much of the trachea and the esophagus you need to sever in a Ola offering? Tanya, we learned in a brisa that says, "Aves hasheni yaseh Ola kamishpat." Right? The second bird, you have to make a korban olah like the rule. Now, this is where we say kamishpat. So what is the rule? The rule of what? Kamishpat chatos behema. So the first opinion is like the rule of the korban chatos of an animal. And we know shchita of an animal is with the severing of the severing of both the trachea and the esophagus. So therefore, you're making the second of the olah like a chatos in that it has to sever both of the trachea and the esophagus. So up to Omer, kamishpat chatos behema, you're saying that it means that you have to treat it like the chatos of an animal chatos, which would be this is all talking about, of course, the korban is the korban olah v'yored. So he has to bring the sin offering. So if he brings an animal, that's why we're comparing it to the animal, right? The animal would be a sin offering. If it's birds, then he brings a chatos and an oaf. And if it could be a mincha offering if it's even more poor. So you're saying it's like the rule of the chatos, o eina ela kamishpat chatas ha'of. Or maybe we're going to say that the second bird is being brought like the chatas of an oaf. The chatas of an oaf is only one of the pipes is severed, not two. So keshu omer, when it says vihi krivo, and then you shall bring it close in a singular form. Chalaka kasu ben chatas ha'of ulas ha'of. The pasuk is telling us that there's a difference between the way the chatas of a bird offering is being brought and the olah of a bird offering. So therefore, they must not be the same. So if that's the case, umani mekayim kamishpat. So then, how do I use the phrase kamishpat if I'm going to say it can't mean the chatas and the olah? The answer is kamishpat chatas behemo. Like we said, it means that the chatas of an animal offering. That's what we're comparing it to. So now let's see what is the practical effect of comparing this olah of a bird to a chatos of a behema. Ma chatos behema ena ba'a ela mina chulin. So rule number one, the chatos of a bird only comes from chulin. It cannot be brought. It can be brought from money that is not sanctified. You can't take your crops, right? When we have crops, you have to take some of your money and you donate it to a Levi, to a Kohen as your truma and your meiser, and then we have a meiser sheni on most years, right? Years 1, 2, and then year 3 it would be meiser ani, which gets given to the poor people, and then year 4, year 5 is meiser sheni again. What do you do with this 10% that's of the produce that's left that's meiser sheni? You bring your food to Yerushalayim and you eat it within the walls of Yerushalayim. Now you might have a significant crop if you're a farmer. So schlepping along crates of oranges is going to be difficult. So what you can do is you can sell it and bring the money instead. And then when you get to Yerushalayim, you buy food there. And what you're doing is you are exchanging the sanctity from your crop onto the money. And then when you get to Yerushalayim, you're re-exchanging it from the money back onto food, and then you can eat it there. Now, that food, you can buy all kinds of food with it. You can buy a steak dinner. You can buy a korban, as long as it's not an obligatory korban. And this is an obligatory korban because you have a sin offering to bring here. So therefore, you can't, just like a chatos cannot be brought from meiser sheni, it can only be brought in from chulin, which means non-sanctified money. So therefore, also this bird offering cannot be brought from sanctified money. By yom, it also has to be brought during the day, not at nighttime. We always know that by animals, all the korbanos are done during the day. Biyado hayimanis, the kohen has to use his right hand, which we also learned that was the case by korban of the chatos. Af ola sa'of, that's the rule by the korban ola of a bird. Eno ba ela min chulin, it cannot be purchased with meiser sheni money. Ubayom, it has to be offered during the day. Ubiyado hayimanis, and with the right hand of the kohen. Okay, so that's what the point of telling us that it's kamishpat. It's just like the chatos. Now, ve'i malahalon. Now, if we're talking about a chatos of an animal, berov shnayim. So how do you shecht a animal? You have to sever most of the trachea and the esophagus. Both of them. Animals have to sever both. Birds, you only have to sever one. So maybe you'll think, just like you're saying it's compared to a chatos offering, so that's an animal offering, you have to sever the majority of the trachea and the esophagus. Afkan, so here too, by this ola of a bird, berov shnayim, all you need is the majority of the two, right? You don't need to sever it all the way. Talmud Lomar, the pasuk specifically goes out of its way to tell us that is not the case, because the pasuk says, malak, you will do malika, vihiktir, and then you will burn it on the mizbecha. So on the mizbeach, on the altar. Now, why are you telling me that I have to malika and burn it? Ma haktara harosh be'atzmo ve'haguf be'atzmo. Just like the pasuk makes it very clear that when you burn the bird on the mizbeach, you burn the body separately from the head. So therefore, af malika, that has to be the case when it comes to the malika as well. Harosh be'atzmo ve'haguf be'atzmo. When you do the malika, you have to do it so completely that the head is severed from the body. Now we said it doesn't mean literally that it has to go all the way through with all the skin, but it means that you have to sever the spine, most of the flesh, and the trachea and the esophagus. So therefore, it would not suffice to sever most of the trachea and the esophagus. You've got to sever the entire trachea and the esophagus. Okay, that is the Tanakama. That is the first opinion. Okay, so the first opinion says, based on the fact that we're comparing the bird ola to a korban chatos, we learn several rules, but one of the rules we don't learn is how much of the trachea and the esophagus to sever. That is learned separately from the pasuk that tells us that malak vihiktir, that is going to be severed, and we have to go overboard with severing the entire way. Rabbi Yishmael disagrees. Rabbi Yishmael says, he says, kamishpat, you have to do it like the law. He says it's not the law of the chatos. He says kamishpat chatos oaf. He says it's like a bird chatos, because the pasuk is talking about the bird offering, and the bird offering you bring a pair of birds. You bring one as a chatos, one as a ola. So it told us how to do a korban the chatos. Now it's coming and saying the second one you bring as an ola. Well. And you do it in the same law. Well, the same law is what? It makes more sense to say it's the same law as the other bird, which was the chatos bird. So the ola bird and the chatos bird have the same law. So how so? So ma chatas oaf, just like the sin offering bird was mimul oref, you do the malika from the back of the neck. Af ola sa'of, same thing too. When it comes to the ola bird, it's also mimul oref. You do it from the back of the neck. Now, when it comes to the chatas bird, you only have to sever one of the pipes. You don't have to sever the entire thing. So you do malika, but you don't have to sever the head from the body. So besimon echad, all you need is.
But what if you actually sever the second?
Then it's invalid, right? We learned that in Maseches Zvachim, right? That if you did malika and you severed the head, you did a ola malika on a chatos, that is potentially problematic, right? I said one way it was worse than the other way. I cannot remember. If you shechted a chatos as an ola or an ola as a chatos, the Gemara went over back and forth over there. And so one of those was potentially valid or not. And they discussed it because the context was, if I changed my intent and I am bringing my chatos as an ola or my ola as a chatos, right? And the question the Gemara asked over there is, how could you change your intent? Your action is completely different. The malika is actively different. And there we had to come up with all kinds of exercises to try to figure out how you could have made the ola as a chatos without violating the rules of the chatos, but that was over there. Okay. But back here, right, you don't have to sever the head, because that's what we're saying. Maybe we'll say it's just like the chatos, right? So you molik veno mavdil, you are going to do malika, but you're not going to sever the head. Besimon echad, all you have to do is sever the trachea or the esophagus, not both. So afkan, maybe you'll say that's the same thing by the ola bird. Molik veno mavdil, you do malika, but you don't separate besimon echad with just one of the pipes, the trachea or the esophagus. Talmud lomar, therefore the pasuk says, vihi krivo, this is where you are going to use the vihi krivo to tell us it is different. Right? The ola and the chatos are different. So whereas the chatos, you only have to sever one of the pipes, the ola, you're going to sever both. Okay, so Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon says, kamishpat, that which it says kamishpat, is kamishpat chatas ha'of. He's saying, right, that it doesn't mean the chatas behema. Rabbi Elazar, but Rabbi Shimon says it means like the chatas, the bird chatas. Ma lahala on techaf beis manaf. Ma lahala and oches berosh ubaguf. Just like, how are we comparing those two together? When you do the malika, you hold on to the body of the bird, right, and the head of the bird. So afkan oches berosh ubaguf. So too, when you do the ola bird offering, you're going to hold the head of the bird and the head, the body and the head of the bird in your hand, umaze, and that's when you're going to squeeze the blood from that. So Maika Omar. So what is the point of that, right? We by the chatas ha'of, it says, right, you're holding it in your hand. So the answer is hachikam. This is what he means. Ma lahalon, just like in the chatas of the bird, keshu achuz harosh beguf mazeh, when he's holding the head of and the body together, he's sprinkling the blood or he's squeezing the blood, right? Because they are connected. The head and the body is still connected. So af kan, so too by the ola, keshu achuz harosh baguf mazeh. So when he's still holding the head, right? He's going to squeeze the blood out, right? So he doesn't have to. So that how do you do that? You're going to not completely sever the head. So according to him, you need to only sever most of the trachea and the esophagus, not the entire trachea and the esophagus. So therefore, that's where Rabbi Elazar Shimon disagrees with the previous Tanna Kama, the first opinion, and says you don't have to sever the entire. We said that he had suggested that from the umalak umaktir means that you had to sever them completely. He says no. This seems to indicate that you only have to sever it most of the way. V'Tanna Kama, the first opinion. So v'chi miachar denafka lon mi umalak v'hiktir, since he's going to learn that you have to sever the trachea and the esophagus from the pasuk that tells us about doing the malika and then burning it. So then v'hikrivo lamali. Then what does he use the word v'hikrivo for? Right? He already knows that you're going to sever the head, so that's already telling me that it's different than the chatas, because the chatas you don't sever the head. So what is the vihikrivo to tell me that the chatas and the of are distinct? So ila vihikrivo, if it wasn't for the vihikrivo, havamina, I would have thought my kamishpat. What does kamishpat mean? Kamishpat chatasov. I would have thought like you told me. I would have thought what you said, that the chatas and the ola are the same. Therefore, it tells me vihikrivo, they are not the same. Well, if they're not the same, then what do you do with the word kamishpat, where it's telling me that this ola bird offering is the same as something? Well, it's not the same. I'll tell you what it's not the same as. It's not the same as the bird chatos, because it says vihikrivo. It must be the same as the animal chatos, and that's how we got to that drasha. Ve'i mishum umalak vehiktir. Now, if you're going to say, it says umalak vehiktir, you're going to sever the head, so that havamina, I would have thought, ma haktara barosh shel mizbeach, just like the burning of the bird's head is on the mizbeach. That's how you burn. That's where the fire is. So af malika barosho shel mizbeach. I might have thought, okay, the malika also has to be done while you're standing on top of the mizbeach. So hasha de kosav rachmana vihikrivo. Since the pasuk tells me vihikrivo, you bring it. So then that tells me that the ola and the chatas are distinct. So therefore, the kamishpat tells me that the chatas of you don't separate it, and kamishpat is telling me it's like the chatas of an animal, derosh be nami ha. So then I can learn from umalak v'hiktir this idea, right, that tells me that you have to completely sever, right? So therefore, you're going to have to completely sever the two simanim, like we concluded. Okay, so now. Chatas behema, one of the things that we mentioned on our way past was that a chatas behema, a sin offering of an animal, cannot be brought using meiser sheni money. right? Eino ba'a el min chulin. It has to be brought from non-sanctified money. Minolan, where do I know that from? That we just presumed you knew. And then we learned from the animal sacrifice that it can't come from the Meiser Sheni to the bird sacrifice. So Amar Rav Chisda says, Damar Krok, because it's a pasuk. V'ikriva Aaron as parachatas asher lo. On Yom Kippur, Aaron has to take the bull, which is his. Shalo velo shel tzibur. It has to be his offering. It's not a community offering. Velo mishal meiser, and he cannot take from his own tithes. Right? He can't take Meiser Sheni that he has and buy the animal with it. Okay, bayom. So the Gemara says, okay, that you have to bring it during the day. So where do I know that it has to be by a chatas of an animal has to be brought during the day? That's because the pasuk says biyom tzavoso, right, on the day that Bnei Yisrael was commanded to bring their korban. So that's clear. It's in a pasuk, and that is telling us about all korbanos. So that means that the bird offering has to be brought during the day is from that pasuk. Why do I need to compare it to an animal chatos in order to tell me that it has to be brought during the day? So the answer is kidei naspa. Sometimes we have a circumstance that it's really not the source, right? The real source for that is this pasuk biyom tzavaso, where it tells me that all korbanos have to be brought during the day. Why did the Brisa try to say that it comes from the animal sacrifice? Because we had learned something else already from the bird to the animal sacrifice, that being that you can't bring it from Meiser Sheni money, and therefore we said, oh, here's another similarity as well, and we threw it in. But that's not really the source. Yodo Yemanis, it has to be with the right hand. So we're going to say again, Midirabba Barbarchana Nafka. That doesn't come from we know that you're supposed to malik with your right hand, not because of it's compared to a chatos, but because of what Rabbi Barbarchana told us that we have learned before. Dama Rabbi Barbarchana told us on Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, and then Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, Kol makom shenemar etzba. Anytime in the Torah that the word etzba is used, finger, kahuna, or the word kahuna is used, we've seen this before a couple of times, Eina Ela Yamina means the right hand. So therefore, that's the source for that. The idach. Okay, and then the other brisa that learns that kamishpat is kahuna boy etzba. Etzba lo boy kahuna. It says kahuna needs the word etzba in order to mean right hand. Finger does not need. So if it just says finger, then it's not necessary. So therefore, that's why, when it comes to the bird, it says it doesn't say the word etzba. By Ola Saguf, it just says kahuna, by the Ola of the bird offering. So therefore, I wouldn't necessarily know the right hand. So therefore, I have to learn it from the chatos. V'Tanakama, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, and the Tanakama, and Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, they don't use kamishpat this way, right? They use kamishpat to compare it to the chatos behema, the animal. And I'm sorry, and Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Shimon says kamishpat is compared to the chatos, the animal chatos, mimura orif minalahu, but he learns, right, that kamishpat tells me that I'm going to compare the ola of the bird to the chatos of the bird, and we said, what's the comparison? To tell me that malika is done in the same place. On the chatos, on the chatos, we're doing that on the back of the neck. So too on the ola, we're going to do it on the back of the neck. So if you don't learn kamishpat to tell me the comparison between the chatos and the asham, the chatos and the ola, so then where do I know that an ola has to be done on the back of the neck? So gamri malika mimalika. The answer is we have a mematzinu, otherwise known as a binyan av, that when one time in the Torah it tells us what malika is, by a chatos tells us malika is done on the back of the neck. The next time the Torah tells us do malika, it doesn't have to give us all the details. We already know what malika is. Malika is back of the neck. So therefore, I don't need a special extra pasuk or drush. It said the first time, malika is back of the neck. Second time it talks about a bird ola, it says do malika. I know it's done the same way. Okay. That is the end of my Gemara, and I did not bring volume 2, so I'm going to have to borrow a volume 2 from here. Chulin. Here we go. We'll continue on in the edition of the shul.
Getting some mileage out of it.
That's correct. Here we go. Now we get if you were getting squeamish with all the blood and the guts and all of this kind of stuff, we are now going to have this a little bit. One of the what we did was we had a Mishnah and we're now going to have a series of Mishnayos which follow the same structure. Some of the Mishnayos do this in a few places. So the structure was Shechita looks like this, Malika looks like this. They're very different. They're opposites. Shechita is the front of the neck, Malika is the back of the neck. Now we are going to have a series of Mishnayos that are going to follow that same thing, where we're going to compare two things and say, this is exactly the opposite of this, right? Where this is kosher, this is no good, and where this one is no good, this one is kosher. That's how we're going to do it. So, first one is kosher b'torin, pasol b'bnei Yonah. When it comes to the pigeons and doves, right? They are different. The rules are opposites. Yonah, when it comes to Yonah is the dove, right? Yonah is the dove, and the turtle. That's the turtle dove. Okay, so that's because pigeons are also kind of doves. Okay, so the Yonah kosher. B'bnei Yonah kosher, b'bnei Yonah. Kosher b'turin, pasol b'bnei Yonah, kosher b'bnei Yonah, pasol b'turin, right? You have something that's kosher by the pigeon that's not good by the turtle dove, and then you have something that's not good by the turtle dove that's kosher by the pigeon.
What's that?
I think they're saying here that Torin is...
Torin is the dove, right? I knew I was going to get it mixed up. I'm not sure which one is which, right? So, and the turtle dove is the pigeon, I guess whatever translation that is. So the Yonah is the turtle dove, and the Tor is the dove. Is it translated as dove and turtle dove?
Torin is the turtle dove.
Turin is the turtle dove.
Right? And then the Bnei Yonah is the pigeon.
Okay. So normally we use the word Yonah meaning a dove, right? But I guess the art scroll flips it. Bnei Yonah is a pigeon.
Or the son of Yonah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Fine. Now, so we're going to see what does that mean. There's when one's kosher, the other one's possible, We're going to have a brisa that's going to explain it. Tchilas hatzihuv. At some point in the maturity of these two birds, as they get older, their plumage yellows. Well, I did not look that up to see if it's a good picture, but I should have.
What's this?
If the plumage starts to yellow as they get older, right? They start off as young, and then as they get older, the plumage turns yellow. Bazeh o bazeh pasol. So in that circumstance, that is between the phases. Basic bottom line is this: Bnei Yonah is a young pigeon. Right? Bnei Yonah is a young pigeon. If it gets too old, then it's no good anymore. And the reverse is true of the turtle dove. It's an older turtle dove. If it's too young, it's no good. If it's in the middle phase where it's turning yellow, then that's no good either way. It's too old to be one and too young to be the other. So therefore, that's our rule, right? One is too young, one is too old. You have to have it right. Taner Rabbanan, here's what the brisa says. Torin gedolim kisherim. When it comes to the turtle doves, right? The older ones are kosher, right? Kitanim psulim. When they're young, they are not kosher as korbanos. Bnei Yonah, if you're going to bring a pigeon as your korban, kitanim ksherim. The young ones are kosher. Gedolim psulim. When they get older, they're no good. Okay, so they're opposites. Nimta kosher beturin pasal b'bnei Yonah. So it comes out that the age of a turtle dove is no good if you use a pigeon at that age. Kosher b'bnei Yonah, and then you can have something which is acceptable by the pigeon, pasal b'turin, that would be invalid for a turtle dove because it would be too young. Taner Rabbanan, rabbis learned, Torim gedolim velo ktanim, right? You need to have the turtle doves have to be adults, not young chicks. Sheyachol, you might have thought, v'alo dinu, that there's a kal v'chomer that we can have here, right? Uma b'nei Yonah, if you're going to tell me that a pigeon is small, shelo huchshuru b'gdolim, and it's not kosher as a grown-up pigeon, huchshuru b'ktanim, so that's acceptable as a young pigeon. So torim, when it comes to the turtle doves, shehuchshuru b'gdolim, where they are valid as they get older, eino din shehuchshuru b'ktanim, for sure, kal v'chomer, they should be acceptable when they're young. So Talmud Lower, the pasuk says, Torim gedolim velo ketanim. It says the word Torim, that they are adult pigeons, adult turtle doves, and not young turtle doves. Bnei Yonah ketanim velo gedolim. The reverse is true about the pigeons. They have to be young, not old. Shiyachol v'halodinu. You might have thought that there's a kal v'chomer there. Uma Torim, when it comes to the turtle doves, shelo huchshur b'ketanim, they're not valid when they're young. Huchshur b'gdolim, they are valid when they get older. B'nei Yonah, when it comes to the pigeons, shuchshur b'ketanim, where you said they are valid when they're young. Eino din shuchshur b'gdolim, sure, for sure they should be valid when they get older then, right? Talmud Lomer, the pasuk says, B'nei Yonah, they have to be the young. B'nei means young. B'nei Yonah, the offspring, the chicks. So ketanim v'lo gdolim, they have to be chicks, not adult, not grown up. Well, my Talmudah. So he says. So what? How do you see that from the psukim, right? From the Bnei Yonah, the Torah. How do you see that? So Rava says lo lishtamit kra v'lichtov min bnei atorim o min hayona. The pasuk never, in all the places where it talks about the birds, never refers to the Torim as Bnei Torim or to the Yonah as Yonah. It always calls them Bnei Yonah and Torim. So therefore, the fact that that is consistently the case, the Torah is telling me that's because the child ones are the only kosher by the pigeons, and the adult ones are only kosher by turtle doves. So, Ema, let's say Bnei Yonah dekasabuhu Rachmana Bnei Ktanim in Gedolim Lo. Maybe I would have said, well, the Torah tells me that since it calls it Bnei Yonah, that means the young ones are fine, the older ones are no good. Torim, but when it comes to the turtle doves, so then Iboi Gedolim Laisi, Iboi Ktanim Laisi. Doesn't say, just says they're turtle doves. That's a general phrase for turtle doves. That could mean your old ones and young ones.
It doesn't say Torim Gedolim.
Doesn't say Torim Gedolim, exactly. So therefore, maybe it could be either one. So Dumya b'Bnei Yonah. So he says, well, it's like Bnei Yonah. Ma Bnei Yonah ketanim in Gedolim lo. Just like the answer is because the birds follow the bird rules. Just like when it comes to the pigeons, the young ones are valid, the older ones are not. Af Torim Gedolim in ketanim lo. So too, when it comes to the turtle doves, when they are adults, yes. When they are minors, when they are young, minors. A minor bird. When they are a chick,
underage.
But underaged. I don't know, underage, they can't buy beer, or I don't know what that is. So, low. So that's a Tana Rabbanan, our rabbis learned. Yachol yu kol torim v'chol b'nei hayonah ksherim. Another brisa that tells us the similar point of view here, that you might have thought that all turtle doves and all pigeons are acceptable for korbanos. Talmud Lomar for the pasuk says, Min torim, you shall select from amongst the turtle doves, v'lo kol torim, not every turtle dove, only some of them. Min b'nei Yonah, you must select from pigeons, v'lo kol b'nei Yonah, not every pigeon. So prat l'tchilas hatzohuv. That's where we know that as they start to get yellowish feathers, they're aging, but they have not yet aged enough, and so therefore, in both circumstances, not every young pigeon is acceptable. The young pigeons that have yellow feathers are not.
Can it also be that the reason feather are changing, they have some sort of disorder? Or?
No. This is the normal aging process. Right? If they got some sort of disorder, right, it wouldn't matter to us anyway, because we know that mumim don't matter by birds, right? So there's no such thing as a mum by a bird. Right. But nevertheless, right, right, they're just normal getting older, right? Right, exactly like the
grain,
right, the grain. May Masai hatorim ksherim. When is it that the turtle doves become kosher for a sacrifice? Misha yazhivu, when they turn yellow golden, right? That's they already passed this tzohov phase. They turn into the full golden phase. Me'emasai b'nei Yonah psulin. At what point are pigeons no good? Mishiyatzhivu, when they get the same age. So Tani Yaakov Korcha. So Yaakov Korcha taught as follows in a brayso. Me'emasai b'nei Yonah kshirim. When are the b'nei Yonah kosher? Mishiyel alu. So Mishiyel alu, which means. We're going to explain it in a minute. So, Hu Tani La, so he taught that. Vehu Amar La, and then he explained it, right? He explained it, and so then he explained what the Mishnah means what he thought the Mishnah meant. Efrochav Yel Alu Dam, when the blood comes out when you pluck its feathers. Right? So at the beginning, they molt. Their feathers, I guess the hairy, whatever, the feathers come out by themselves. They don't really bleed when you pluck a feather. But when they get old enough to pluck a feather and it bleeds, that's the point at which it is now old enough to be brought as a korban. Once it then starts yellowing, then it's too old, right? So it's got to be in between those phases.
You're causing it to bleed at the same time when you pull it out.
Yes.
Is there a problem on its own?
Nope, because we said no woman by birds, right? So you don't have to worry about that at all. Amar Abaye says, Mechi shamat gadfa mine v'asadantma. So he says what it means is from the time that you pluck the feather from it and blood comes. So then what do you say? Misha'alu. Misha'alu dam. Isn't that the same thing? So I think that what he said in the first place, where he said blood, that means just blood is in the meat, right? So it's the same thing, right? When the feather comes out, Rashi says it's the same thing. All right, the Zarch Goals explains the same thing. They're the same phrase, right? Once you pluck a feather and the blood comes out. Both of them are saying that. Okay. By Rabbi Zera. Rabbi Zera says, "Haomer harei alai ola minatorim o min bnei Yona." Let's say somebody makes the phrase. He says, "I'm going to bring a sacrifice. Haven't decided. Pigeons, turtle doves, not sure." Okay, so he's going to bring whichever he wants. Vehevi tchilas hatzihuv shebazeh v'shebazeh. So, and he brings from both of them, right? He brings a turtle dove and a pigeon, both of them in the yellowing phase. So, what is the halacha there? Okay, mahu. What is the halacha there? We said that that's no good, right? But why did we say that's no good? Are we saying it's no good because sveika havi, that we're just not sure whether that's old or young, and so therefore we said don't bring it because if I only had to bring a pigeon and I bring it yellowing, it might be too old already. And if I have to bring a turtle dove and I bring it yellowing, it might be too young. So therefore it's invalid. Don't bring any of them yellowing. But this person said I'm going to bring from one or the other, and he brought both. Which means the nafik, now that he's brought both, he's for sure okay. Because yellowing is either too old or it's too young, but he brought both. So therefore, if it's too young, so then his pigeon is valid. If it's too old, then his turtle dove is valid, right? But one of them is valid. Okay. O dilma, or perhaps biryahavi. This yellow is its own stage, meaning it's neither young nor old. It's adolescent, right? The low nofik, and therefore he's brought two birds that are invalid, and he has not fulfilled his oath. So which is it? Is it a doubt, or is it really like we know it's no good? So Amar Rava says, Toshma, come and listen. Prat litchilas hatzihuv shebazeh v'shebazeh posel. Right? We said that you cannot bring, right, that you're supposed to be mina torim or mina bnei Yona. That means that as it starts to yellow, in both of those cases, it's no good. So Yamar bishlama bir yahavi shapir. So if you're going to tell me that it is its own phase, so then that pasuk makes sense, because the pasuk is saying it's a pigeon, it's young, but it's now golden a little bit, so therefore now it's no good. And the turtle dove, it's golden, it's a turtle dove, but it's no good. So therefore it's its own middle phase, it's no good. Ella, Iamart Sveikahavi, if it's just a doubt, and we just don't know which one it is, it's Rechalamuti Sveika, then how could the Torah tell us not to bring it? Because Hashem has no doubt. Hashem knows what it is. So therefore, the pasuk would not say you can bring some bnei Yonah and some. No, the only reason we're not bringing it is because we just don't know which one it is. The pasuk isn't going to tell us not to bring it. We're just doubtfully not bringing it. So it seems that if the pasuk is telling me not to bring it, so therefore it must be that the point is that there is a phase. This is like the real phase. So ki itzrich kra. So the answer is no. Really, that pasuk, min atorim min bnei Yonah, brings some pigeons and some turtle doves, isn't to tell me this yellowing, because you're right, I wouldn't need a pasuk for that. That pasuk is to teach me a different exclusion, and that is lemute nirva v'ne'avad. If somebody had relations with the bird, I don't know. Take my word for it. Or
I don't even want to know about it.
Nope. And somebody wanted to have, or somebody worshipped the bird as an idol. So those birds are going to be invalid for sacrifice, right? So sal kadaitach, I would have thought hol iksiv, since the pasuk says ki mashchasam bahem mum bam, that if you do this avera, then they are destroyed, they're disgraced, and they have a blemish. V'tana debei Rabbi Yishmael, that's by animals, right? If somebody has, these are invalidations of animal sacrifices because they're considered blemished if that happens to them. So, we learned by the Yeshiva and Rabbi Yishmael, Kol Malkum Shamar Hashchasa Eino Ela Davar Erva. The word Hashchasa, Miki Mashkisam, means having relations, right? And then, Vavodos Kochav, It also refers to idolatry. So therefore, when it says ki mashchisam, when you do mashchisam, which is one of those two averos, so then they have a mum. Dichsiv, as the pasuk says, how do I know that the word hishchis means these things? Ki hishchis kol basaris da kol ala oretz. When it comes to Noach, it says that they destroyed their ways along amongst the earth. They were having relations, interspecies, and that was no good. Avodas kochavim, as far as idol worship is concerned, Dichsiv, the pasuk says, Pentash chisun, lest you become destroyed, vasisim lechem pesel, and you make idols for yourselves. Kol shamum. So therefore, what we say, Kol shamum posel bo, davar erva avodas kochavim poslim bo. So any animal where a blemish would invalidate it for a sacrifice. So therefore, if it's somebody has relations with that animal, or if it is worshipped as idolatry, so then it becomes invalid as a sacrifice. But if I have a bird, and we said, as Yehuda was pushing me several times to say, that if it has a blemish, it doesn't become invalidated by a bird. So in davar eravos kochavim poslim bo, I might think that this idolatry or having relations with the bird isn't going to be invalidated because it's just a blemish, and blemishes on birds are not relevant. Only if you're like missing a whole wing or a leg, then that invalidates it, but not if it just has a blemish, like a feather being pulled out. So vahani ophos, these birds, since they have no blemishes to invalidate them as sacrifices, damarmar, as we said, Tamos v'zachrus bebehema, vein tamos v'zachrus be'ophos. When it comes to sacrifices of olah, korban olah, they have to be male and they cannot have a blemish. That's only by animals. But that is not the rule by birds. You can bring a bird of either male or female, and it could also be with a blemish. So Ema, I might have thought, davar erva vavodos kochavim nami lo, when it comes to relations, or when it comes to serving it as an idol, it would also not be invalidated. So therefore, kamashmo, and that's why I need a special pasuk to tell me separately that birds are invalidated by those averos. So so therefore that pasuk min ha neyona, min torim, is not telling me about the yellowing of the feathers. It's telling me those animals are invalidated. Okay. By Rabbi Zera asks the following question. Ha'omer harei olas behema. If a person says, I'm going to bring a korban olah from an animal, mina ayil o mina keves, and I have not decided if I want to use a ram or a sheep. Okay. What is the sheep? That's a lamb. A lamb, right? Lambs grow up to be rams. So first it's a lamb, then in its second year it gets old enough and it becomes a ram.
You don't dodge it.
The only thing is, you should not want to hit it, right? So this guy brings vehevi palgos. He brings a palgos. What's a palgos? Palgos is a lamb that's maturing and has not yet become a ram yet. It's in the in-between phase, right? The awkward moment between its youthfulness and its becoming a full-fledged ram. Okay, so this is a palgos. So the question is, this guy brings a palgos. Now he said he's going to bring either a lamb or a ram. He brings a palgos. Mahu, what's the halacha there? Same kind of a question we had by the birds a moment ago. That's why it makes this sugya nice and quick to go through. Aliba the Rabbi Yochanan lo tiboilach. Right, according to Rabbi Yochanan, I have no question, because the Omar, as we said in the end of Maseches Menachos, when we were discussing this, birya havi, it's its own stage. It's not a lamb, it's not a ram. You said you were going to bring a lamb or a ram. A palgos for about 2 months, that animal cannot be brought as a korban. It can be brought when it's a lamb, it can be brought when it's a ram, but not while it's in this in-between phase as a palgos. Ditznan, as we learned in a Mishnah. Hikrivo, if pasuk says hikrivo, you bring it as a korban. Mevi alav nische ayil. So you are going to bring on it the libations, right? If you're going to bring this as they're going to bring this palgus, what do? So you don't know, is it a lamb or a ram? Because it's in between. So you should bring the libations, the oil and the wine that goes with the korban of the greater amount, as though it was a ram, just in case. Ve'ein ola lo mizbacho, but it doesn't count as his korban, right? Because he's not sure whether he brought it properly or not. V'amar Rabbi Yochanan, right? So this is what happens is like if he was obligated to bring either a lamb or a ram, and he brought this pagas, it doesn't count because we don't know. Maybe it was that, maybe it wasn't. So it won't count. He's got to bring another one. V'amar Rabbi Yochanan says, O la'ayil, since the pasuk says that you have to bring as a korban either a ram, rabos es palgos. So this tells me to include a palgos. That's why you have to bring, if you're bringing the palgos, you're going to bring 2 esronim and the third of a hin as wine. Why? Because it's its own thing. So if you're going to bring a palgos, you have to bring it as its own, and of course it doesn't count for your korban, but that's why you bring those. Now, according to Rabbi Yochanan, he says palgos is its own thing. So therefore, if you promise to bring a lamb or a ram, and you bring a palgos, you have not done your job. So you're going to have to bring another one. Kiti boilach, the question is, aliba de bar pada. According to Bar Pada, Chav Gimel on the base, Da'amar, where he says, Maisi umasni, you bring your korban, and here's what you do, you make a condition, okay? So, you're not sure, right? You're not sure whether this is a lamb or a ram, so what you should do is, you bring it, and you say, I'm obligated to bring a lamb. If a palgus is a lamb, then this will be my korban. If a palgus is a ram, then this is just a donation, and I'm allowed to make a donation, and as a shlamim, and I can bring it. So that's what you do, and then you have to bring another korban, right? But his basic point is, I'm in doubt. I don't know what this palgus is. So, miamrinon, do we say, be'ayel v'keves masna, be'bria lo masna? So he says, do we say that when it comes to the ram or the lamb, so he can make such a condition, right? So, but when it comes to it being its own thing, right? So you can't make a condition, right? So if it's its own thing, it's not a condition. O dilma, or do we say, be'bria nami masna? Could he make a condition also? Meaning, Bar Pada is wondering, maybe it is its own stage. So when it comes to the Nesachim, right, he can bring a condition and he can say, okay, the Pagas, if it's one thing or the other, so I have to, if it's its own condition, so I'm making it as I'm bringing it as a donated offering. So now here though, right, you're obligated to bring a lamb or a ram. So it's not going to, if it's a birya, it's not going to be effective. If it's his own creation, it's not going to be effective. Da'amar ir birya havi li have kule nadava, because he can say, if it's its own thing, if I'm only bringing the one animal, so then let the entire thing become a donation. So we don't know whether it's going to satisfy his oath or not. So teku. So we don't know the answer to that question because it all depends whether Rabbi Yochanan is right or the Tanakama is right, and we're going to say that this is palgus is his own phase or not. Boy, Rabbi Zera continues with the same line of questioning, and he says, "Ha'omer arei lachme toda min ha'chametz o min ha'matzah." If somebody says, is it okay if we go like 2 more minutes, we get to the Mishnah? We can get to the Mishnah. It'll be quick. Same kind of question. Person says, I'm going to bring the loaves of bread for a korban toda from chametz or matzah. I haven't decided which one. Vehevi seur, and he brings seur. Now we have discussed what seur is. Mahu seur. So mahu, what's the halacha there? So seur deman. Seur is dough that's starting to turn chametz. And we have multiple definitions for what that seur is, right? Seur de Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda argue about it. Rabbi Meir says that once it starts to turn colors, so then that is already chametz. It's already seur. And according to Rabbi Yehuda, he says it has to develop cracks. Well, according to Rabbi Meir's version of what seur is, where it has turned colors, Rabbi Yehuda is going to suggest that's matzah ma'al yasa. that has not turned into chametz at all. That for sure is matzah according to Rabbi Yehuda. So, de Rabbi Yehuda le Rabbi Meir. If you're going to tell me Rabbi Yehuda's addition, what does Rabbi Yehuda think that Seor is? He says that Seor is where the cracks not only are starting to develop, but they're already crisscrossing. Now, Rabbi Meir, according to Rabbi Meir, that's chametz. That's for sure chametz. That's way too late. That's for sure chametz, right? V'ida Rabbi Meir Rabbi Meir. Maybe it's Rabbi Meir's version, according to Rabbi Meir. So he says, he says once it starts to turn colors, he thinks that you're going to get malchus for it. Can't eat that on Pesach. So midulakia le chametz. He's clearly indicating that that's chametz. Ela de Rabbi Yehuda. So rather de Rabbi Yehuda. We're not talking about Rabbi Yehuda's version, according to Rabbi Yehuda. So it's got a couple of cracks, right? It's got some cracks. It's seor, and according to Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, so we don't know. Rabbi Yehuda says don't bring it, don't use it on Pesach. But what is he saying? What's the halacha here? Sveika havya, is he saying, I just don't know whether it's chametz or not, so don't use it. V'nafik miman of shach, and in this circumstance where he says, I'm either going to bring the loaves of chametz or the loaves of matzah, well, it's one or the other, right? It's not a middle ground, it's either, so it's one or the other. Oh, Dilma Biryahu, or is Rabbi Yehuda saying, no, it's neither chametz nor matzah, so you don't get malchus for eating it, because it's not chametz, but you can't get a mitzvah for eating matzah with it either. So it's neither. So therefore, in this circumstance where you said you were going to bring loaves that were either chametz or matzah, so you haven't brought either.
You may have to amend the 4 questions.
That's right. So velo nafik, right? And he's not going to satisfy his oath in this circumstance. Now, V'amar Rav Huna says, Homer alei alai lachmei toda. Problem is, where's your question? Basically, it sounds like it's the same question we asked before, right? If it's one or it's the other, or is it neither, right? Same question. But it's more complicated here with the Korban Toda. Why is that? Because Rav Huna says, if a person says, I'm going to bring some of the loaves of bread for a Korban Toda, maybe Toda v'lachma, you got to bring the entire Korban Toda, the animal, and all 40 loaves. You can't get away with bringing some loaves. You got to bring everything. So what's the problem here? So he's got to bring the whole thing. The answer is, so the issue is, he has to bring everything. So now he brings these loaves. He doesn't know what he's brought. Has he brought the chametz part? 10 of the loaves are chametz, the other 30 are matzah. Has he brought the chametz version or the matzah version? So now he's stuck. So it's going to be not valid anyway. Here's what's going on. He says, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to bring the dough to satisfy my friends. I'm going to contribute to my friend's Toda. So he's not obligated now to bring the entire thing. He's just going to bring whatever he promised to bring. Sof, at the end of the day, hu lo yada, hai gavri chametz hu delay matzah hu delay. So he says, still at the end of the day, so now he's going to give that dough over to his friend, and his friend can't use it either, because his friend's not going to know what it is. Even if you tell me it's one or the other, it's definitely one or the other, right? So therefore, he doesn't know what else to bring. So it's going to be impossible for him to use it in his korban anyway. So, lo tzricha, de lo amar liftor, mefik gavra yodo nidro, nafik, o lo nafik. So he says, what he says is, he didn't say, I'm coming to help my friends or satisfy my friend's obligation. He just says, I'm going to donate to my friend for his korban. He's not going to use it, but he promised to bring dough now. And he said, I'm going to either bring chametz or matzah. He promised. So the question is he fulfilling his oath when he brings this seor? Because is the seor chametz or matzah, in which case he did bring chametz or matzah. He doesn't know which one, but he did it. Or is it its own separate thing, velo nafik, and therefore he's not satisfied his application, teku. So we do not know the answer to that question either. And this is a place where we will conclude for today.
Whew. Wow, that was what, 2.5?
2.5, yeah, 2.5.
Now, before we part ways this evening, believe it or not, we have some unfinished business from Masechtas Menachos.
Oh, wow.
It is our custom here at the shul when we complete a Masechta to express our gratitude to you, Rabbi Loiterman.
I appreciate
for all the energy, the efforts, the erudition, the humor, everything that you put into this year.
The old movie quotes.
It's an incredible thing, and we appreciate it so much. And we have a little something for you.
Thank you.
To enjoy.
I very much appreciate it.
And sorry we're a bit late on this one. I think we're like 23 daf in now.
As long as you don't finish the next one.